Welcome to the Alliance 2021 annual membership meeting. This year we're meeting virtually for the first time. Although there are benefits to meeting this way, in that we can literally meet in our jammies if we want to, there are also unfortunate aspects. Namely, we all miss the fun engagement and interaction that we've had in meeting together and sharing fellowship, catching up with this organization, which we all care about. My name is Sherry, and I'm a member of the Alliance Board of Directors. Our board of directors is made up of farmers and eaters from across the state, people who engage to help make the Alliance a better organization. We continue to grow this kind of engagement through our amazing staff, our board, our caucuses, and our members. Thank you to everyone who serves on the board, several of whom are joining us today. I want to give a special thank you to our staff. This small but mighty group does so much throughout every year, but especially in the roller coaster year that was 2020. They not only kept the Alliance going, but thriving, and they were able to move things forward progressively with extraordinary dedication. Thank you all. By the way, we are currently looking for members to join our board. This time commitment is not high, and it's good work. If you're interested in finding out more about this opportunity, please reach out to me. As a staff and board engage with members, we've been encouraged to hear that when we ask about the values of our Alliance, so many of us recognize the need for equity, inclusion, and racial justice. As a majority white organization, we are looking hard at ourselves and how we show up for racial justice and how we incorporate justice into the values of the Alliance. We know that to achieve a just and regenerative food system, we must address the legacy of harm to people of color. We're working with the organization Up With Community to be much more intentional about inclusion and diversification. And now we want to take a moment to recognize the original caretakers of this land. Given the many geographies that we're joining in from today, and to gain perspective on the scope of this acknowledgement, please open the native land map that is linked to in the chat. You can find your location and help us acknowledge the communities that once cared for and this unceded land on which we reside. The map is not perfect, and it may leave out Indigenous people and intricacies of their territory. It is constantly being updated and corrected with more information. These lands where we live and work were the ancestral homes of Indigenous people that were forcibly removed, executed, and robbed of their traditions. The Alliance asks that we join together and take a moment to consider the ways that we can all take action in our communities to support Indigenous people. You can also visit the website in the chat to learn more about the actions that we can all take as individuals. Now, a little bit about our agenda today. It is an engaging and dynamic agenda for an engaged and dynamic community. We start off with a lay of the land, reviewing this past year and highlighting issues at the state and local level. After that, we'll have some breakout sessions where we can all share ideas. And then we're going to review our current policy priorities, discuss impacts and opportunities, and discuss ways to learn more and to get involved. We have a special announcement later in the afternoon, followed by a virtual happy hour at 5:30. So hey, let's get started. Please help me in welcoming our Alliance Executive Director, Liz Stilk. Thanks.
Thank you, Sherry. I really appreciate the your opening. And I want to thank members and partners for being here and for supporting the Alliance. I'm Liz Stilk. I've had the honor and pleasure of serving as the Executive Director for the last 4 years. And now I moonlight as an air traffic controller. I'm tuning in from Homewood, where I live in the south suburbs. And as much as I love seeing you all, I wish we were gathering in person. we're going to just dive right in. A big reason that we gather and the purpose of our annual meeting is to come together once a year to celebrate all of the things that this organization and your support and your membership has made happen. So I'm going to start by asking you because we can't, if I ask you to unmute, we're going to hear some crazy stuff. So here's what we're going to do instead in order to celebrate each other. So I'm going to ask you to put your hands up like this, sideways, and then you're going to give with your hands outwards, and you're going to give a high five to the people that are next to you in the Zoom. So, I love it. Piero, can you take a screenshot of us? All right. So, and Piero, if you're helping with the slides, I'll need you to click through on each victory. So the first one that needs to be said is that we made it through 2020. It was a really difficult year for all of us personally and professionally, every single one of you, and those challenges aren't over yet, but we persevered. This year we tried new things, just like Farmers and Eaters did this year, experimented. I'm proud to say that some of the changes that we've made in the past year, like digital organizing and talking to you, are ones that we're going to stick with, and they've helped us reach a broader audience, connect with more farmers and eaters, and more easily connect with policymakers and build our power. We launched Buy Fresh, Buy Local Illinois with some amazing partners. Oh, I forgot, high five that we made it through 2020. I love that you're humoring me with this, thank you. Okay, so the next is that we launched Buy Fresh, Buy Local, with partners, some of whom are here today, like the Land Connection, Illinois Farmers Market Association, FoodWorks, Angelic Organics Learning Center, Advocates for Urban Agriculture, SIFPAC, and it came just in time when folks were looking to find local food the most. So it's a searchable database of local food in Illinois. All right, the next thing that's exciting. Yay, Buy Fresh, Buy Local, high five. We also had the great honor and pleasure of distributing $250,000 to 27 different local food farmers as part of our resilience fund this year. Distributing the money was really huge. We quickly built up the infrastructure to do it. It was a sign of trust and confidence in the alliance from the Chicago Region Food Systems Fund, and we're just honored to have had that opportunity. And we look forward to sharing all the stories this year about changes that the Resilience Fund grantees have made. So high five. We also produced our food and farm voter guide for the first time with that helps people cast their vote in congressional elections. It also has already given the intel from those responses has been really helpful with new members of Congress like Marie Newman and longtime members Senator Durbin and Representative Bustos, who serve on ag committees, and their responses have been really helpful already. So high five for a food and farm voter guide. We finally, in coalition with so many groups, including IAPO and the Farmers Market Association, we got a $500,000 appropriation for the Healthy Local Food Incentives Fund, which is a SNAP match at farmers markets. We're so excited that Illinois can now apply for a federal match to bring $1 million that helps people be able to spend twice as much at farmers markets. So high five for our long campaign to win, to get that appropriation. Also, another big coalition win, we got $300,000 for the Fall Covers for Spring Savings Cover Crop Incentive Program. And those acres were taken up by 50,000 acres within hours. And it's already sequestering carbon and protecting our water. So I want to give a high five and thank all the soil health champions who helped make that happen. So typically we're able to celebrate a lot more legislative victories. We had a really aggressive agenda last spring, but COVID stalled the legislature. So we're really eager to get back and prepared for that in 2021, which you'll hear more about. So you can read more about our wins and our work in our 2020 annual report. You should have gotten a sneak peek by email this morning, and you can find it in the Google Drive. We'll post a link in the chat and we'll share it publicly early next week. Okay, so let's give one last high five, and I won't make you do it again. High five, everybody. We promised door prizes for those of you who are here, and I'm really excited now to introduce my colleague and the woman who keeps this alliance ship afloat, Angie Mazur, who is going to pick a name from a hat for our first door prize. So Angie.
Hi, I'm Angie. I work at the Alliance, do all the bookkeeping for everybody. So here we go. Here's our first name, Melissa Beaugrand. Are you here with us today?
I'm here. I just unmuted.
All right, that's great. What's
All right, we'll see. Melissa, we're gonna, if we don't have your address already, we'll follow up with you and we are gonna mail you an Alliance t-shirt.
Yay, thank you.
Yay.
Yeah, congratulations. Back to you guys.
Awesome, thanks. So I'm also up next on the agenda to talk about, to just give a little bit of a reflection on 2020. So, we talked about all the things that we accomplished together, but 2020 was a massive impact on the food system. And so I want to share a little bit about that, what it means, what it tells us about what needs to change and where do we go from here. Again, I wish we had more time and this could be a deeper dive, but at the end, I'll talk about more opportunities for you to learn even more about these issues in the future. So we can all agree that 2020 changed the way people think about their food and how it's produced. It was the first time in my lifetime that food supply chains were on the front page of newspapers for weeks. So this is just a couple of samples from Illinois and nationally. One of the most Piero, next slide. One of the most devastating images, and that's going to stay with me for a long time, was of milk being dumped. I think we all saw this everywhere. Before COVID, we knew that the food system was heavily consolidated and that only a handful of corporations control the marketplace. And then our food travels really long distances along long supply chains with many hands touching it. And it's highly specialized. And that became most evident when the food chains started to break down as workers got sick, as schools closed and shelter orders were in place. And what it showed for us is that really more clearly than ever is that there's three distinct food supply chains. One produces smaller packages that we take home when we go to the grocery store. Another is larger packages, so like restaurants, schools, commercials, restaurants. And so like, I'm gonna be on this slide for a little while. And so the packages are really large and meant to be, turned into food for other people. And then another, of course, that we're all familiar with is direct market, where you buy directly from a farm. As one system collapsed, it put extraordinary pressure on the others. And it became clear that we can't just move products from one supply chain into another. For instance, if you're producing massive amounts of cheese for restaurants, when you go to the grocery store, you don't want to buy 50 pounds of cheese. So it really caused massive backups, and it made many farmers have to either dump milk. We also saw massive depopulation of animals. And then there was just huge ripple effects too in the feed industry as well. So when thousands of workers too, who in meat packing plants who stand shoulder to shoulder in just a handful of few giant meat packers started to get sick, the livestock producers who typically count on those big plants started moving their livestock to smaller and mid-size processing operations. Now that had a direct impact, especially on many of our members who use those smaller and mid-sized livestock processing for their own direct market sales. And so there was, at the same time though, there was also skyrocketing demand for local direct market food, and people were cooking more at home. But as our farmers in the local food farmer caucus told us, it was a blessing and a curse. So they had, both. They had to deal with new safety requirements. They had to keep their own workers safe by scheduling people at different times. Farmer Trog in Northern Illinois told us that at the beginning of the pandemic, he spent 12 hours in his car making deliveries to his customers to keep them safe and healthy. and direct farm sales went through the roof. Next slide. A team of researchers with the USDA and a bunch of universities across the country conducted a national study in the fall of 2020, and they asked 5,000 households how they what were their food practices in 2020. And I was so happy to see that 35% of those 1,600 people said that they purchased from farmers markets, CSAs, they bought local and independent or from a food box. So that just really shows how many people in 2020 experimented with local and looked for and really relied on local for their food security. We know too that the challenges are not just downstream, they're also upstream. These food supply chains are linked to deforestation and climate change, biodiversity loss that's happening, water quality, and the resilience of our own immune systems in our communities. COVID made it just devastatingly clear that our planet's health and our own are no longer separate. And in the food supply chain, just as in nature, there's really resilience and diversity. And so I want to talk, next slide. I love this, this analogy that Navina Khanna, who directs the HEAL Coalition, has used to describe this moment. She says that there are multiple crises that are happening at the same time. There's the climate crisis, a public health crisis, a racial crisis, and an economic crisis, and they're all like tectonic plates, and they're colliding into each other right now in terrifying ways that none of us expected and none of us saw coming. But here's the thing, when tectonic plates collide, magma rises to the surface and something new emerges. So here we are in the magma of 2020, and we get to choose if we want to build something new with this magma that we have while these systems are failing us. And so I want to talk about what that could look like. Next slide. I love these really bold aspirations for what our future food system could and should be like. This is drawn from the report, A Nourishing Regenerative Tomorrow, which is a synthesis of 1,300 teams in 120 countries who are part of the Rockefeller Foundation Food System Vision Prize last year. They talked about that there's 5 aspirations, that food could be like community, it could help us spur the new economy. It could be reconciliation, medicine, and resilience. So, we need more locally grown indigenous food readily available and affordable for people. We need to rebuild local processing and put more people to work, especially in rural communities. We can use food to heal the wounds of the past with land justice, reforming land ownership, and protecting human rights, all in the food chain. Food could be a source of health instead of causing diabetes and heart disease and obesity. And it could be resilience, a source of resilience, where we reduce our carbon emissions, we protect the soil, we use land sustainably, and we eliminate waste by composting. A lot of these ideas, there's so much reason to be hopeful that these are possible, because there's a new administration with the Biden administration that has a desire to rebuild the USDA and address climate. We're going to have to push them on other issues, especially around race. There's a new Congress that makes some of these possible. There's already been big ideas and legislation introduced for structural change in the food system, and that our friends at the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition that we're a member of described it as, we're beginning to have the wind at our back, even if it's a gentle breeze. So to move in this direction and to make this vision real, we're going to need equitable distribution of power. Next slide. And we're at the Alliance, we're working to be really intentional about how we build power, as we think that in order to make these things real, we need to build power, farmers and eaters together, to bring the solutions to the table and make those stick. So you can see, we think about, moving from powerless to powerful, that we have to do that. If you can click one more time, Piero, we have to get the 3 R's. We got to get recognition, we've got to get respect, and then we can get results. And And so we're going to talk more later about how we do that and how we organize, including with our caucuses, and how we use policy as a vehicle to build our power and our influence and our voice. Finally, last slide, I do wish that we had more time today to dive into. There's so much that happened, and there's so much that is happening that we could look forward to, but we just don't have all that time today. So I want to direct you to things that we have upcoming so that you can learn with us and build this power together. So the first we're really excited about is we're going to dive into what's happening. We're going to have a new series called What's Cooking at the Capitol. During the legislative session, Molly and Liz are my colleagues. They are going to whip up easy local food recipes and dish on the freshest state food and farm policy developments. So we think, Liz and Molly, can you wave your hands and say hi? The two of them are going to cook together, probably in Liz's kitchen, and we'll put it on Facebook Live and on YouTube, and they're going to talk about what's happening at the Capitol on our bills, which we'll talk more about when we get to our policy agenda. I am going to start a new series complementing that called Meet the Press. And I'm going to talk with food and farm journalists about national and international issues and federal policy, starting with what is the new Biden administration, Vilsack, USDA, and the Congress? What are the issues on the table, and what are we going to be able to do and when? There's a bunch of outlets I'm excited for you to know about, like Civil Eats, The Counter, and the Midwest Center for Investigative Reporting. Okay, and then finally, in the next couple of weeks, weekends, there's the Chicago Food Justice Summit. Liz Ruppel is going to have a workshop on the new statewide 30 by 30 campaign to advance nature-based solutions to the climate crisis in Illinois. We'll put the registration in the chat right now. And Kathleen, our newest staff member this year, she is also recording a workshop on how we think about building power in our theory of change with one of our members, Wes Gerald, and that will also be available from the summit. So please consider registering and joining us at the summit too. I'm going to stop there, and I actually don't have the agenda right in front of me. Okay, so then I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes. Next, I want to pass it over to Piero, who's going to take us into our next activity.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Let me go ahead and we've reached the end of our live portion, so I'm going to go ahead and just stop our live stream. So goodbye Facebook, and then we're going to get into our members only portion of our meeting.